425 North 6th Street down towards the end, and the river was behind our house. It had came around behind our house, and then it went over like in Susie's Addition in that area there. Well, we were surrounded by water more or less in the front of the 6th Street. There's like 4 feet of water coming down like a rush, like a river. So the only way we could get across to go up to the Red Owl for groceries is that my dad would go first and we'd hang on hands and kind of make like a rope across because the current was so strong. And we had water in the basement, was full, probably an inch from the main floor. And my dad had rabbits, raised rabbits in the back. And so my brother and him had to move all that up towards the house because the river was overflowing and coming up towards our house. So we had a lot of water.
And what were your parents' names? What was-
Frank and Victoria DeShepard. And my brother worked for Baldwin, the messenger for Ray Baldwin.
Mhm.
And he had to sit there all night long because they were afraid that the water was gonna come in there and flood that place with the printing stuff and everything, so.
And DeShepard is D-E capital S-C-H-E-P-P-E-R? Okay. And if it had come in, what does he do then? Were there sandbags or something, or just watch it?
I had talked to him yesterday and I said to him, tell me some things about it. And he said, well, then he would have to call help to come
Oh,
in and
okay.
get this printing stuff up and everything, so.
But it didn't, apparently it didn't go
It didn't
in.
come that way, no, because it went the other way, so it didn't, because at that time, where were they? They were like at, I want to say where Hunan Lion is, up in that area, I think, is where it was at one time. And so it never got that far, it came more down towards like the Red Owl at that time.
So, the Baldwin printing was on Main Street.
It was on Main Street.
Yeah, where Henley's printing used to
Well,
be?
I don't know if it
or-
was like where Henley's is.
Oh.
Because I know one time it was back behind by the, where the telephone company is now.
Oh, okay,
It was there too, so I don't know exactly where it was at.
okay.
That's high ground.
I can't remember. Huh?
That's high ground.
That's high
Yeah,
ground.
it was high ground because it never got the water.
Mhm.
Yeah. And as someone shares a story, if you guys have a memory that pops in, don't be afraid to just add it in. Just like we're having a coffee table conversation. Don,
What?
what were you doing during the flood?
I was in a National Guard. I lived in Tracy at the time, and we just got back from Camp Ripley, Ripley.
Yeah,
And Marshall happened to leave that day to go to Camp Ripley, so we had to come up here and
Be a hero.
do a little damage up here with our truck.
yeah.
But we stayed at it was a high school, now it's Heritage Point.
Okay.
But we stayed up on there, and 6th Street, between there and the Catholic Church, was a river. I mean, it was flowing like crazy down that street, you know that. And cars would come down there and try to turn and go across the thing, and the current would just carry them around, they couldn't even go in there.
They always think they can make it.
Yeah, there was several cars tried it, but they could never cross it because the current was so strong. But we did a little salvage work. I had to get the mail truck out. We had a winch on one of the big 6x6s. I walked down there, the water was about that deep, I hooked onto the truck and we pulled it out. A few things like that.
So where was the current, where did they try to cross the?
On 6th Street, by the Catholic
Must
Church.
have been Marshall.
It was
Sixth and Main.
really going down there like you wouldn't believe. That's where the caskets floated down the street from Ray Camps.
And baby
Really?
cask- Yes,
They lost
away
a few-
from.
lost a few baby caskets.
Oh my God.
They went down the street.
Hopefully they were empty.
They were empty and never knew.
We
Insured,
didn't see-
insurance coverage.
Yeah.
And then after the flood, I was working for a guy by the name of Alex Pulsate, and we went and cleaned out the Red Owl basement, which would have been flooded to the ceiling. All the canned goods, there was air in them, they floated, and they moved all over the place. And there's cases and cases, the labels all come off, so we didn't know what the heck they were in. So Alex salvaged whatever you could salvage out of there, but then we had to hose the place down, but
Did Alex own the Red Owl?
no,
Oh, he's just,
he just sublet the job or something,
okay. It's still damp and dark in that basement,
is it?
yeah.
But that was all underwater, cans were floating all over the place. Some were in cases somehow. But it was a muddy mess.
This is continue on, Frank.
Alec Pofley was my cousin, actually, and I know they took some of the good cans home, but it was a surprise every day when you opened it, because you never knew what it was.
Might be cat food.
At that time, I was farming north of Marshall, about 6 miles, and it had been really dry all summer. Started to rain that morning, it was a Sunday morning. And boy, I thought, this is just what we need. But it kept right on all day long. And by night, during the night, it was over 10 inches. So my friend from Ghent drove over, him and his wife, and my wife and I, we said, well, let's go to Marshall, maybe see if they're getting any water over there. Because I was by the 3 Mile Creek, and it was still not much there yet. So we drove to Marshall, and it didn't look too bad. Drove around, saw some water here and there, nothing big. Went home, and by that time, the 3 Mile Creek had risen. It was just roaring. You could just hear it. It was about a quarter of a mile from our house. My friend and his wife tried to head back to Ghent. They got about halfway, and the 3 Mile Creek, about a mile from the Noyers, was over the road so bad he couldn't go home. So he had to come back and stay with us overnight, couldn't get home. My cattle were across the river, but they were smart enough, they were, I guess, smarter than I was, because they swam over to my side by the buildings, and they were standing on the hill in the morning, so I could open the gate and let them in. But then afterward, the next day, we tried to get to Marshall to see all the damage, and it just was unbelievable. And we sure had enough rain. It was a long time before I ever got to see my fields again where I could work in them. So,
Well, I was an observer. I worked with McLaughlin and Schultz, and McLaughlin and Schultz had a base radio station in their office, and us guys in the pickups had the remotes. So they would call the office, and then we'd be dispatched to wherever to help out. Mostly that was pick people up, get them out of their house, and take them to the, I think it was the reserve building that they had people,
The armory?
armory?
No, that was underwater. I think
Yeah.
And that got underwater too,
Yeah.
so they had to be moved out. But anyway, we were there just simply to help out where, because they could dispatch us and we'd go and pick up, so. Nothing heroic, just did what had to be done.
What about the building of the dike built? Can you talk about that?
Well, the building of the dike, that came later.
Right, but it ties into the flood.
Oh, yes, it certainly does. Well, we were very much involved in that, and in fact, I think that McLaughlin and Schultz was the prime contractor, and we built that dike by hauling dirt and gravel and crud and everything that could be loaded up and hauled out there to put on the base of that dike and build it up. Well, we built that dike in rain too, and that went 24 hours a day. And all the trucks and all the people were needed, you know, so trucks were, you drove our truck, you drove our truck, you drove our truck, our drivers drove our truck, but we didn't have enough to go 24 hours. And so all of this had to be taken care of. Our dozers were out in front pushing the gravel and dirt and stuff up as they drove in, and they had to back a block to get down there, and sometimes more than that, because there wasn't a place to get on. So one truck would go in, then they'd have to, empty truck would get over in the other lane to come on out, and the loaded truck would back down. Well, pretty soon, that loaded truck had that pretty well compacted, and they had ruts that deep. Well, they began to fill up with water. So then the truck had to come along and spread on that, and the dozer come back and level that off. It was quite an operation.
So he did that, that was on a permanent dike.
That became a permanent
He
dike.
did, huh? Okay.
Yep.
Do you recall how long that took, Bill?
Pardon?
How long did that take to build that dike? Do you recall?
Heavens, I really don't remember, but I think it was probably close to a month.
Okay. I was just curious. I figured it would take a long time. It's a big dike here in town.
Oh, yeah, well, anybody that had a dump truck was hired, they could come over there as long as it ran, you know?
Yeah.
So it was quite an experience.
Yeah. And you said many people made good money during that time because they could
Oh,
work
yeah.
as long as they dare work.
Oh, yeah, as long as you could work there. You know, it was federally funded, so your money was guaranteed. And a lot of people wondered at the time how this was going to be taken care of. But there was no issue, it was all,
Emergency funds.
pardon?
Emergency funds
Yep.
were allocated, I
Yep.
suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren, what's your story?
Well, I tell you, in 1957, I had just graduated from high school, farm school, run by the University of Minnesota for farm kids at Morris, Minnesota. And they had a school reunion that summer in June, and it was on a Saturday. And a lot of the kids, of course, they were all there yet, you know, pretty much. And they come from South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, and Iowa. But on Sunday, my folks decided to go visit a neighbor 2.5 miles from our farm. We got over there on a Sunday afternoon, and well, it had been raining, you know, not a whole lot, but all of a sudden it come down in sheets, you know. And the neighbor's housewife, she started getting towels from the bathroom to put underneath the doors because the wind was blowing the water in underneath the door sills. And the storm let up, so we decided we better go home. So we got down to the first culvert, and there was 2 feet of water over the road. Dad didn't know if we should drive over it or not, but we made that one. And then we had to cross a bridge, and later on that bridge washed out. That was the first 6 inches of rain that we dumped out of our gauge at the farm home, you know. And so Dad says, you boys better get the cows in and milk them and get the chores done. We did, and later on it started raining again. And about 11 o'clock that night, we dumped out another 5 inches. And it was a pretty wild storm, really, with all that rain. And I live on a 3 Mile Creek area. That's where one of our farms was. And we had cattle in one pasture. And I know it took out the fence for about 300 yards. The water did. And me and my brothers, we waded through chest deep water to restring the wire to get, you know, make sure they stayed on our side of the fence. And a lot of real estate changed hands without any money, I know that year, because of the washing, the topsoil was gone. And, yeah, it was a pretty tough time trying to cultivate some of the corn after that because of the gullies that were washed in the cornfields. And then in the next year, my uncle, Paul Schwan here in town, he wanted me to work for him. And first thing I had to do was start making floodgate doors for the dairy. They were operating a dairy and that lunch room down there. And so I made, we took planks, 12-inch planks, and we doubled them and put weather stripping between them, and we made it so we could screw them into the mortar in the bricks, between the bricks, so that sandbags could be put there. He says, we never want to go through this again, because in the dairy store alone, I remember the jute box sitting there in the corner. You could see the water line. It was 2 feet deep up on the side of the bottom where the speakers were or whatever. But yeah, it was what an experience. But we were lucky we got through that bridge, because later on, when it was all gone, I know back in '68 when the bad snowstorm was too that spring, all the snow melted out. And Larry Sturzinger from Ivanhoe was doing our township roads and stuff. I stopped the school bus one morning. I had 3 of my daughters on there. I said, you don't want to drive this road anymore, because you could walk over to the side and look, put her all the way through, because the dirt was all washed out and there was this much gravel and fill on top of it. So called the town board supervisor. I said, you better get some road closing signs out. And so they did, and it took a long time to, the township went broke that year because it cost $1,000 every time the plow went through. And I remember the town board, they had to go to Minneapolis or St. Paul and borrow money, and they got chewed out pretty royally because they said, don't let your township get into that kind of a situation again. So they, after that, they put me on the town board as a town clerk, and I was there for 18 years, so I remember a lot of culverts being replaced after that, and spent a lot of money on maintenance for bridges and roads.
So what were your parents'
My
names?
parents were Walter and Lydia Stelter.
And then where did you live?
We lived, the home farm was west of Lynn, 5 miles. And on a 3-mile creek was my grandfather's farm, which he homesteaded in 1892. I bought that farm in 1964. And so I had several times getting across the bridge. I've got a few pictures here if you want to look at them from that bridge.
And then where did you graduate from high school?
It was the ag school at
Oh,
Morris.
in high school.
Yeah, that was high school.
Oh, okay.
It was Morris, Minnesota. That superintendent in Lynn was always giving my dad, trash about keeping us boys home. They helped get the crop in the spring of the year. And he says, Walt, your boys should be in school. And my dad told the superintendent, he says, I never got to go to school until all the corn was picked in the fall of the year. And then he didn't say too much after that. But the school at Morris was a 6-month school, but we started at 7 o'clock in the morning, and our last class might have been 5 in the afternoon. But it was mostly farm kids they could get out. We graduated the 29th of March. And so I was home for field work for 3 years. Dad kind of appreciated that. He didn't have to look for a hired hand.
Well, let's keep going around the table.
Well, on the 1st of April of '57, Uncle Sam came calling. Got drafted into the Army. Came home just before Father's Day on leave. Got stuck in the middle of the storm. Remember, we was at my folks that afternoon, and it just pouring and pouring and pouring. Of course, we was young guys, and we had to go out that night. We had to get our girlfriends and my brother-in-law, future brother-in-law. We was driving around south of Marshall here in the Starlight Drive-In Theater. Looked to the southwest, and just like a wall of water coming across the fields. So we better get the hell home. Well, we made it home, but just barely. My brother-in-law never did make it home. Next day it was all water all over the place. Never did get back to Marshall. Just barely got back to the airport and get out of here again. So.
Question is, Ray, did you ever pick up your girlfriends?
Oh yeah,
Before you got
they were
over
with
it?
us.
Okay, I was just.
But we got them home,
I had to make sure I had
We
that
got 'em home
detail
safely.
correct. I was just curious.
and she turned out to be my first wife.
Oh, hey.
Oh, how nice.
And your only wife.
Yeah, well, I still look.
You better say that.
Still looking for the second one.
Yeah.
No, it was wild. I know when I went back to the city to catch the airplane. I think my sister-in-law was driving back. By Redwood on Highway 19, it was flooded over there again. I mean, the water was still up high there. It was brutal. But I got out of here before the sea, so you have to clean anything up. So I was gone again.
Oh, so you didn't have to do any cleanup work?
Nope. I worked for Uncle Sam for a couple of years.
Okay.
So the Army,
Yeah.
and then, so you were at the Starlight Drive-In.
Well, out that street, yeah, Gulf Coast Road, down whatever it
Country Club
is,
Drive.
Camden Drive, and it was just water was just coming across the country, just like a wall. Man, we better
Yeah,
get the
I
devil
guess
out of here.
it
This ain't a safe place.
Yeah, from Roadside
Yeah.
Park was a river, and it was
Yeah.
coming across there, yeah.
It wasn't a river, it's like
Just
a wall coming.
Lake.
Yeah. That was one time I said, we better get home. And usually I don't go in no hurry to get home, but. And we lived in Yed at that time. I lived farm with my brother for a couple of years, and he lived right on 3 Mile Creek, so he had a little fun after we got done, so.
All right, and Cheryl?
Well, I was 12 years old at the time of the flood, and I remember it very distinctly because my grandma Karen had passed away we buried her on Saturday, and on Sunday we went over to my grandpa's here in Marshall to do the sympathy cards, and my uncles from Louie and Pete and my mom and all them were over there, and the wife called and said, if you want to get home, you better get home right now because the water was coming over the creek. That was my Uncle Pete and Leroy that were living next door to my husband, Dwayne, at that time.
So
And-
is that 3 Mile Creek too?
Well, it's south of Marshall.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And I live by Ghent, and so my mom and dad and my sister, we started to go home, and we have 4 creeks to have to get to our place. Well, the water was running out over every place there was, so we finally just drove through it and got home, and we were there, I think, for 4 or 5 days before we could even get out because the water was up so high, and some of the creeks though was going over, and it washed the creeks out. So that's how I remember it.
Your parents' names?
Were Donna and Harry Borble.
And you also shared that you vividly remember the baby caskets
Oh,
floating
yes,
down.
my great aunt and my great grandma lived across from the Catholic Church, and we had to go in after the flood and help clean that up. And they said that there was baby caskets floating right in front, and they're right across from Holy Redeemer Church.
Out of Ray Camp's garage. is where
Yeah,
it
they
came
were
from.
coming out of there. And their basement was a mess. And my great-grandma was an invalid. All she could do is sit and look out the window and, you know. But we helped clean up in the mud and the muck down there. I remember them having a big, they called, it was some kind of, they called it a mango, that was like something that you ironed your clothes with, and it was, and we hauled that to our place, and my mom cleaned it up and got it going again, but it was a mess.
Your mom's name was Carrie?
Donna,
Oh,
well, she was
Donna?
Donna Karen, yeah. She was married to a boy.
what was her name?
Donna,
Donna. And what's your dad's name?
Harry.
Oh, okay, Harry.
And that was Bourbon Fields.
So would any of you say that you've experienced something as, I don't know, as intense as that since that flood? Anything else that was?
In 1955, a tornado came through, just north of our place, about 2 miles, and it took out where the Midway store is located on Highway 19, 10 miles west of Marshall. We helped clean up a couple of farmyards and stuff, and the one farm that we went over to combine some oats on, we had 8 flat tires on the combine, and there were silverware and dishes and houseware stuff strewed all over the field. 2 of my brothers and I would walk in front of the combine to throw the lumber out of the way, and any sharp knives or pitchforks or anything that was laying out there from the farmstead was out in the field, and we knocked the grain pan out of the combine 4 times and had it repaired and replaced. Finally, we had to buy a new one and just put it in there. And but we still got 36 bushels the acre off of the oats that farm would have yielded probably close to 90 otherwise, but we tried to salvage what we could for that guy, so.
Yeah.
I remember when they bought the old Super Value or whatever it was, when the railroad tracks went through town. Standing on the railroad track and looked down towards Mulberry gas station, and you could see just a little the top of the pumps that were all underwater down there.
It's full.
And there was gas tanks that were buried. They didn't have a lot of fuel in them, then they raised up, they went right up to the parking lots. They were just floated up, they were just like big floats. The co-op lost a few that year, and it was fun.
Well, it was quite an adventure.
Yeah.
Frank McLaughlin, after it was over, said, "I like the way you handled yourself through this." He says, "You should come back in the spring." And I did, and I stayed for 40 years. I retired there in 1995.
So you were just helping out at that time?
No, I worked for them, but, you know, at that
Oh, they
time.
laid off
You worked,
in
right.
the winter, okay, yeah.
Mhm. But they could call you back at any time, and then you either go back or you didn't get unemployment compensation. So it was a matter of going back to work.
Yeah,
Well, I liked it.
I guess so.
You have to like your job if you stay for 40 years.
Yeah,
Well, they were good people.
I don't know, Karen or Jennifer have any further questions? It's kind of a wide open slate now. Now you've heard their stories, so.
so it lasted about a week of things being all chaotic and the cleanup and all that. Or how many days did it rain?
Pretty much one day, wasn't it?
A day and a night.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, wow.
It just came down sheets.
Like by Monday, I don't think it was raining too much anymore.
No.
No.
Do any of you remember how much, what the rain total was?
Well, we had 11 inches, I think, in
I
Kent.
think about
Yeah.
11.
That's what we recorded at our
11?
farm, was 11 inches.
Foot of rain, whoa.
That's a lot of
That's a
rain.
lot of water.
Can't imagine that clouds can carry that much water.
The crooks were
We
all
thought an
over.
inch, we think an inch and a half is a lot.
Today on the 3 Mile Creek where this bridge went out, they got some federal grants and they made a dam. They raised that road at least 20 feet. And they put a 36-inch culvert underneath.
Okay.
And then the water has to get way up to the top where
Yeah.
there's an
You
8-foot
can
box
take-
culvert where it would go down and then release it, you know. And then 3 miles down the 3 Mile Creek, they put in another one like that to retain the water and just kind of, you know, ease the flow out.
Okay.
Kind of got wise up a little bit about that water.
Well, yeah.
Hold it back a little bit, don't make it all come at once.
By my house, the 3 Mile Creek washed away the bridge that time, and afterward they put in culverts and made it a spillway,
Yeah.
so that when the water does get high, it just goes over the top and it doesn't ruin everything.
Yeah.
You just have to fill it in a little and it's right back where it was. But that 3 Mile Creek is, I know the Redwood's bad, but I heard a lot of talk about the 3 Mile Creek, and that was really bad that
Yeah,
year
our farm was
also.
on the creek too.
Mine was too.
About maybe a couple hundred feet from the barn.
Yeah.
And my grandfather, when he came here, he could have homesteaded land right close to Marshall here, pretty level farmland, but he was a rancher and a farmer, and he wanted a creek, you know, for water. My grandmother said they carried the water for 2 years from the creek to the house for washing clothes, bathing and cooking, and after they got a well, they thought, boy, they were really living high on the hog, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
And you think you got it bad.
Well,
I got out of the cleanup, but I had to go back
can't
and work
remember
for the
ever
sand, so,
cleaning
yeah.
up. Cleaning
don't-
up the
you don't
mess.
remember
I don't
cleaning up-
remember cleaning up
Everything
the
was
mess
mud.
and everything, it was just.
How many
all
remember
mud.
cleaning up after
you
the
know.
flood in here?
Oh, it was just like,
That cleanup was a long process. That didn't,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it was just
That
sticky
took
mud.
weeks.
Oh, weeks.
Took all summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we watched them fill in the river behind us, you know, after the flood, after all that. just eliminated the river. Because during the flood, there was a little bridge that went from over in Susie's addition there, and a couple cars went into the river because
Yeah.
the bridge gave out with all the water and everything, you know. But it's just, now it's just nice back there, but
When did the diversion channel come in then? When did that come? The diversion
93?
channel.
Right afterwards.
60,
Pretty quick
the
after.
what?
Oh,
Diversion channel.
60s, early 60s.
When?
Yeah, I
Like
remember.
63 or so.
Yeah,
Pretty quick after that flood then.
Yeah, that's got government money. to put-
didn't something happen in
Yeah.
93, some floods?
There was a
Oh,
big flood in 93.
oh, yes.
Yeah.
They built a dike all along that road, which would that be, out there by Gary Deitz's land?
County
Oh, yeah,
Road
They
23.
built a big dike of dirt
I have a picture.
for that
County
flood.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
send you an
Yeah,
outfit
County
around
Road
it.
7 by the,
To
between,
stop water
but
from
before
coming
the
into
airport,
Marshall.
that area, yeah.
And they hauled it away again afterward, you know.
In
That was
'93.
before the diversion channel.
Yeah.
In '93, I think there were a lot of homes in this town that replaced their basement carpet 3 times.
I'll send you
Oh,
that.
my parents did.
And you think we had a
Many times.
Mother's Day storm, a Father's Day storm, and a 4th of July storm.
Yep,
Mother's Day, Father's Day, right.
Yeah.
9 inches each time. I think.
Yes.
I remember that one too. That was-
Some insurance companies were getting a little, hesitant about paying it the third time. They did twice on a lot of them, but the third
But you know,
time.
we had the flood and it was bad, but we never had anything, no tornado like Tracy did, so we can be really
yeah.
fortunate, because we didn't lose anybody I can remember. Can't remember if we lost anybody in the flood like Tracy had that terrible tornado.
What they lose, 14 in Tracy?
9 people.
9 is all that died?
There was one casualty due to this flood over by Ghent in a car.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. it was-
All
it
right,
was
I
one
kind of forgot
person.
that.
No, yeah. It was out
You know who
by-
that was?
Well, I don't remember.
I don't know.
It
I can't
was
think
out
of the
by
name.
the Newton.
Yeah, I remember the tornado, because I had a house in town.
Okay.
Were you living in Tracy then at the tornado?
Yeah.
You were in Marshall?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it was in the
Yeah.
newspapers.
I lived south of Tracy then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the veterinarian was actually stitching people up. He got a charge out of that.
I know, it got pitch black here in Marshall.
Yeah,
The tornado
Pitch black.
started in Lake Sarah, actually, and
Yeah.
it sucked the water, that's where it loaded up with water, and it actually, you could see the ground on the bottom of Lake Sarah for just a little bit as it sucked it out so fast. And then you could see the trail go from Lake Sarah heading towards Tracy. The water, as it loses water as it goes. And then, I guess on the other side of Tracy, it was getting to be really narrow already when it got over that few miles. The water trail, it just keeps losing water as it goes. But it sucked it right out of Lake Sarah till you could see the bottom. Just for an instant or two till it closed back in again.
Yeah, I went north of Tracy, what, 7, 8 miles before it petered out.
The noise from that tornado, we could hear it out west of Lynn too. We had a German Shepherd farm dog. You could not get that dog in the pickup to ride with you. But that day, Dad and I were in town getting parts and we left the door open. That German Shepherd was in that pickup trying to get under the seat in the front. I suppose that pressure on it, animals can sense pressure and stuff, and that humming noise or something, it scared that dog that bad. And then we couldn't get her out of there.
Animals know a lot of things.
Yeah.
The Armistice Day storm, I had a friend of mine lived north of Green Valley. They had a bunch of ducks, and it was, I forget which month it was, November, I think.
Yeah, Armistice Day, yeah.
storm.
yeah.
And the river was open yet, and he said every day those ducks would walk to the river. And they'd come back in the evening, every day. On the Armistice Day, by noon, they were home. They knew there was something coming. They weren't going to stay in that river. They were headed home because they knew the storm was coming. So animals, even ducks, know what's going on.
Gotta be nice to be smart as a duck.
Would be.
These perfect questions that you two have.
This was great.
So people were getting around in boats, it looks like, to go from
Oh,
place
yeah.
to place on Main Street.
Yeah.
Out on the farm, my neighbor I think it was Monday or Tuesday, we looked out, he had so much water in his farm, he was roaring around out in the field with his boat. He had a little boat, maybe a 4-horse motor, he was roaring all, it was that deep, you could go anywhere with his boat. That was part of the 3 mile.
So what did them
trip
crops
back
turn out
up.
like? I wasn't around. What did them crops turn out like that?
Oh, they were terrible, I mean, it took, unless you were in higher ground, but.
Yeah, I wasn't home for the crops and harvesting. I was gone with.
I had started to mow hay on Saturday and I didn't get it done, and I think it was at least 3 weeks before I got out there to mow again, because it was in lower
Yeah.
ground. Well, the hay was no good,
Yeah.
it was all full of dirt and.
Bill or Don, do either of you remember visions or sights of people riding in the boats on Main Street at all?
Oh, sure, they did. Yeah.
Sure, in some of the residential areas, it's the only way you get around is a boat.
We lived on, when you went down North Sixth Street, we lived on the left-hand side of the street. And so we'd walk, my dad and us, we'd walk, make a line and go across to the other side of the street because there wasn't as much water. We could walk up to Red Hall on that side of the street because there wasn't quite so much. There's more empty spots that we could get up there and get groceries, then we'd come home and drop them off on the way, for people and everything, then we'd go across. Like my brother said, we were lucky that there was no manholes that were where we were
Sure.
crossing, because we would have been sucked right down in there. But it was, because we lived probably not even a half a block from the river where the dam was. So that water went down and it was just a massive river going down there. It was just, we'll never see anything like, I hope I never see anything like
Oh, the
that.
Sixth
but-
Street River, they call it.
Yeah, yeah.
You can live through the worst blizzards that come through the country, but at least the cleanup isn't near what it is with all the
Right.
mud that washes into the basements and all of the furniture and the rugs and everything that are ruins, it takes a long time to dry that basement out, really.
It also brings a stench.
Yeah, it does. It's got a certain stench to it.
Does the sewer kind of mix in there with it?
Well, everything's mixed in there with it.
Yeah.
The farmyard runoff and all
Yeah.
that, it's all in there.
It just isn't any fun.
No.
It's a salt.
When you have to scoop it up with a scoop shovel and carry it out in 5-gallon pails, it's,
It was a sticky mess.
yeah.
We had part of a picnic table from Lind in our pasture after the river went down, and that was, we're 13 or 15 miles from Lind. Came down the 3 Mile Creek.
Wow.
It was all broke up, but you can still see it said
From
Lind.
Camden Park, or how did you know where?
It said
came-
Lind on it, I don't know why, if it came
Oh.
from the park or how we got it, but that's what it said. Lindwood or Lind Park, might have been State Park.
Yeah, I found, our family lives in Lind on the river, and I found a sign from Camden Park that said 1957,
Okay,
and so we kind of have that on our yard.
okay,
So that must have been
sure, same time.
rushed
yeah.
down there, yeah.
Who was your grandfather? Bob Chernus?
So he's my dad, he was my dad,
Oh, Bob was your dad.
yeah,
Yeah.
Rob and Gloria.
Yep.
Can't believe they had kids that young.
They were good friends with my mom and dad.
Is that right?
I was
Yeah.
the last and the best, of course.
Oh, yeah.
I was the best.
The best till last.
I liked it when you said all of this animal waste come roaring down through there.
Well, it all had-
You know, that song was the fragrant aroma of horse manure goes floating around the room.
Well, it all come down the river.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how big an area did that cover. That I don't remember how big an area that covered.
Flood.
The flood, once they got through Marshall, it slows down.
But I mean, how big an area did, like up river did it come from? I don't remember.
It's a big area.
Well, when it got beyond Green Valley, it had plenty of wood.
Yeah.
But
It just
where it
flattened out.
started, you mean like the
Yeah.
other side of Lind? I don't know how
I don't know how
far.
far south it went.
Quite a ways, I think, on the other side of Lind.
Yeah.
Southwest of Lynn, yeah.
And that's the trouble, it's so much higher than
Yeah,
us. It just-
everything's
All
coming
that
right now.
water-
Once
all
you left
that
Marshall,
water
it's flat
comes from
then.
Linden, Russell, and Ruthven, all comes to the Redwood River, and it all comes.
Once it gets past Marshall, it's kind of flat then, so it just flattens out.
Once it hits Marshall, it flattens out.
But like he said, now they're building all those
Yeah.
partial
retention
dams
ponds.
over there that it's gotta be really high before
Yeah.
the water comes our way. That really helped a
Yeah,
lot. when
yeah,
they built those.
the elevation in Island Lake Township is really high because when I'd be out in my farm fields, when I look down towards Marshall, it's all downhill and the water would really run pretty
200
fast.
feet.
Till
Yeah,
it
it
got,
really-
yeah, till it got to Marshall.
Those
and then
dikes
it
helps a lot.
Slow up.
They say Marshall's in a hole, that's why we don't have any tornadoes, because everything goes over it.
Yeah. Looked a little bad last night for a while.
Yeah, it sure- I thought here comes another flood or something.
Marshall's had a tornado one time or another.
Yeah, that was quite a few years ago.
Yeah, before your time.
Yeah, because my grandparents farmed out there by where the middle school is now. My dad's dad did, and they had my dad would say that there was a piece of straw that was stuck in a tree, you know,
At a
just.
post.
That
It sounds
happened.
so funny to hear you say, my dad farmed out where the middle school is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
to go, okay, back
That was
that,
a long time ago.
Yep.
yeah.
My grandpa did, yeah.
Yeah.
City dump used to be out by that, where the junior high
Maybe,
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was a.
That used to be used to be
That was
out
city
of
dump
town.
was that
over there.
Fisher's, and Fisher's had scrap iron.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
junkyard.
was north of there, yeah.
Yeah,
Fisher Brothers.
junkyard, yeah.
Yeah. The city allowed you to go out and shoot rats at that time because of some, it was banana, they brought the whole branch, it seemed like at that time, because they must have, the branch was there that the bananas hung on.
Oh, yeah.
And you were allowed to go out with rifles and shoot the rats because they were so thick in that garbage at that time.
I'm sure.